Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. I hope that you've all enjoyed the Congress, and we thank you for joining us today. The subject of our presentation is Zoroastrians following a non-traditional career path. Even though we're all women up here, this applies to everyone, people from as young as 18 figuring out what they want to do with their lives, to people who already have had a full career, but they might have young people in their lives who need a bit of guidance. So in today's global society, we are not limited by geography or traditional barriers. Therefore, anyone can really do anything that they want to put their mind through around the world. And I hope that today provides some new insight into different avenues that can help the next generation. So let me introduce our group here today. My name is Samanaz Kapadia, and I'm the programming manager at Fox Sports. I have an undergraduate degree from Cal State Fullerton and a master's from Pepperdine University. One of our speakers this morning is Neda Iranpour. She's an Emmy Award-winning reporter, anchor, and weathercaster. She's been in the news business for more than a decade and dedicates her life to inform, inspire, and entertain viewers every day. She is currently the evening anchor just 2 hours away in sunny San Diego, although I hear there's been some snow today. So we're all lucky here today because it's snowing in other parts of Southern California. And prior to moving here, she was working in Northern California and Nevada. She will explain today what it took to reach her goals, including moving 9 times in 11 years. And as you'll find out from our panel today, following your dreams is not always easy, but it's sure worth it. Our second panelist is Kuma Deboo. She's a retired senior in the Senior Executive Service, or SES. She's a warden for the Department of Justice's Bureau of Prisons. Out of 2.6 million federal employees, only 0.003 achieved the rank of SES. So she's had a great career. She has a master's in public administration from the University of Southern California and a BA in political science from the University of Washington. She also has an honorary doctorate in public service from Glenville State College. And she is currently a criminal justice consultant for the Moss Group out of Washington, D.C. So these are the women that will be talking to you today. At the end of our panel, we will have a Q&A, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them at the end. So to start with, we'd like to get a sense of where everyone in the room comes from. Are there any doctors, lawyers, or engineers here? Okay, we have a few. Those are what most people consider traditional careers. But most of us didn't start out wanting to be that way. For example, I moved to this country when I was 5, and when I was 6 years old, I was watching The Wonderful World of Disney with my dad, and I saw Mickey Mouse. As a 6-year-old, Mickey Mouse was the most exciting thing to me. But there was a man hanging out with Mickey Mouse, so I asked my dad, who is that guy, and why does he get to hang out with Mickey Mouse? And my dad said that he was the CEO of Disney, and if I became the CEO of Disney, I would get to hang out with Mickey. Well, that settled it for me. That's what I was going to do. I was going to work in entertainment. So even though today I work in sports, I have always worked in entertainment. I've had a 9-year career, and it all started because when I was 6 years old, I wanted to hang out with Mickey Mouse. So I'm sure when we were little, everyone here wanted to do something different. Did anyone here want to be a famous athlete? There's a couple. I'm sure a lot of people wanted to maybe be a soldier, a cop, a firefighter, or a fighter pilot, which I also went through a fighter pilot phase. Anyone? Or maybe a ballerina. I'm sure some of us here took ballerina, dance classes. So as you know, there are limitless ideas and possibilities, and in today's global society, we can really do anything we set our minds to. So now I'd like to go ahead and turn it over, and Neda will tell you about her career.
Thank you, Samanaz. Wonderful introduction. And I have a lot of questions for your job, too. But we'll do that later. I made a video for you guys so you can get an idea of what my job is. I'm currently the evening anchor in San Diego, so if you're ever in San Diego, just watch Channel 6. And this is a video. We're going to dim the light so you can get a good look at it, but this is just a about 4 or 5 minute video of my job.
Training that'll blow you away. Team USA is back in San Diego to test their new sleds and their race suit fabrics. And San Diego 6's John Carroll has been out there tonight again covering these protests. It looks like they're just now arriving back at that park. John.
No matter what, it sure is beautiful out there. The last time Torrey Pines State Reserve experienced dry conditions like we're experiencing now was back in the 1980s when several trees died.
We now are learning a lot more about the man who police say caused this massive standoff and who tore through this neighborhood.
We're starting to see this wind pick up a lot here. This is the strongest it's been so far this morning, and the sun's heating things up. And look what's happening out there. That smoke smoldering. Not only do you have to be an advanced surfer to be out here, but there is certain wind and sea etiquette. They actually have a lineup going on where they're taking turns catching each wave. Ever since he was 7 years old, his family's been going to as many games as they can to support him. His mom there, one of the loudest.
No matter what sport you're in, whatever adventure you want to try, helmets are cool. To spread that message, the High Fives Foundation is giving away POC helmets. So I'm taking on the Edible Pedal 100-mile bike race. I have to take my new bike up Kingsbury grade somehow. It's just a little warm, but this isn't so bad. Did my lips catch fire?
Now this one, probably my favorite story of the night. A 6-week-old cheetah cub is spending time with his new dog friend, preparing to be our zoo ambassador. The young cheetah, Ruksa, was rejected by his mother.
Neda, Iranpour is a runner. Neda, what's your longest distance?
26.2 full marathon, not
There you go.
anywhere close to that 100-mile. I can't imagine. He ran since Friday morning until today, this afternoon. Crazy, crazy. But at least the weather was on his side. We had a little bit of cloud coverage earlier today. And here's what's going on out in the Pacific. This is the excitement that's about to hit most of California. So we are still well below average. We still could get about 5 more inches to bring us back to where we should be. We wrap up our week of wellness only on San Diego 6 with wellness in your workplace. As Americans face diseases from obesity to depression, heart disease, and cancer, Dr. Deepak Chopra believes the root cause of a lot of this is stress. A sign of orthorexia would be ritualistic eating, perhaps eating the same food at the same time every day. Or spending more than 3 hours a day researching health information. But with all these apps like MyFitnessPal and Runkeeper, you can count your calories, count your steps. It's no wonder health can consume you. Research associate Lizzie Weiss hooks my head up to sensors.
This is showing your brain activity right now.
No way. A swirl of yellow, green, and mostly red, showing a lot of thoughts firing off until she had me breathe slowly through each nostril.
Breathe in through the left, hold, breathe out through the right.
Then I said my mantra to myself. This is a word with no real meaning, rather a sound in the ancient language of Sanskrit that's supposed to let my brain know I'm meditating now. Here we listen to a Sanskrit chant intended to cause relaxation with its vibrations.
You got into a more deeper, calm, relaxed state during the chant.
The dark blue on the screen shows my brain activity simmering down. There is no denying the popularity of yoga, especially here in San Diego. You can hardly walk a block without bumping into a studio. In yoga, every pose has its purpose. This is one of Bava's favorites. It's used to detoxify. It's a simple twist, arms out to the side. You move one leg up and over in the opposite direction. And this is supposed to help clear out a lot of the toxins in your digestive tract.
Here at Mission Bay, on any given day, you're likely to find paddleboarders. It is one of the fastest growing water sports in the world, and there are many different types of boards to choose from. Jillian Gibbrey cruising right in. Tell us about your board. It's hard to get into Warrior 2 when you're wobbly. Okay, now that I know Max has a really good track record, we're gonna try to go for it. Thank you. And go to the next one. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. So that's pretty much what I do in a nutshell. It's what I've done a lot of that in the past, I guess 10, 11 months since I've been in San Diego. So we get to do a lot of fun stories like that, whether we're swimming or surfing or whatever it is. But I wanted to first share this message. I don't know if has anyone read the book 4 Agreements? Kuma has, my brother has, Chris has. I've tried to encourage it. So these are 4 agreements that I find really important just throughout my career and life, and they're messages that I wish I learned sooner, that I've also taken with me now. And first of all, be impeccable with your word. Obviously, with our career, the word really matters. So everything you say, people will definitely take to account. It should be truthful. And we'll explain further what 4 agreements means. But also don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. And always do your best. So as I'm going to share my journey of how I got to this career path. And kind of keep these in mind throughout, because it's been huge lessons that I've learned, and we'll kind of start at the very, very beginning. So let's go back. So that's me as a baby, and that's me with my brother right there, that picture on the side, me and my dad. And as a child, I was always very shy. I mumbled a lot. My parents always said, hey, can you speak up a little louder? What are you saying? So I was very, just a shyer kid. And so that's kind of why when I look back at my career now, I communicate for a living, but it just makes me laugh that back then, I was hard to understand. I was afraid to speak in public, and but I had all these ideas. So growing up, there was, just that I wanted to try and do, and that still doesn't end. I mean, there's always new things I want to experience, and so these thoughts were there, and I thought about doing them, and then in high school, it finally dawned on me one day to just go for it. So it was, I think, my junior year of high school, where I had this idea of creating a newscast. And at our high school, we never had that. But all of our classrooms got a TV. So why not? So I found a video production course that was off campus, and we were able to create our own newscast that way. But again, I was shy growing up, so I didn't ever want to be on camera. I held tryouts and hired anchors and people in our acting department who wanted to be on TV, and we sold ads and went to nearby businesses and sold commercial spots, and we started LHS News. So that was early on in high school. It was just for fun. I thought it'd be a fun thing to try. We covered sports and campus news, and that was pretty much what we did. And then once I graduated, no one else took over. It was a lot of work, but that's okay. It was a fun experience for me. I went to university, and I got into the business school at Texas, and we had a good business school. So I was Longhorns. So I was a finance major, and it still never really realized, what I wanted to do. I thought stocks would be fun. I don't know, Wall Street. I had no idea really what I wanted at that point. But during the summer, I wanted to intern at CNN for fun. So I went to Atlanta for one summer, interned there, and it was a wonderful experience. And that was really just for fun for summer. It's a cool way to spend the summer. And then in college, I took a couple journalism classes, and I didn't feel comfortable there. A lot of the girls were very pretty. Everyone had done their hair and makeup, and they came to class really fancy, and I didn't fit in. It just felt different to me. So to me, I don't know, I wanted to write and tell stories, but that was it. And so I ended up, 9/11 happened. And the day that 9/11 happened, I couldn't just sit there and watch the news. So I had to go somehow and be helpful. So I went to the Fox affiliate in Austin while I was in school, and I knocked on their door, and I said, hey, can you let me in now? Like, I didn't want to wait for the application process to complete. And they said, we really need people. So they let me fill out my application, finish it right then and there, and they let me be an intern that day. So that day, I was able to caption for all the breaking news that was happening. So I was just typing in the words that would appear at the bottom of your screen during breaking news. And that was when I really felt this need to be a part of news. It was just something that came alive inside. And so I was able to make a tape early on, just through college. I was the UT reporter. So I would do campus-related news. And I put together just kind of what you just saw with the 4 or 5 minutes of my work. I put that on these old VHS tapes and must have sent out more than 200 of these to try to get a job. And it's very hard. It's a competitive business. Everyone wants to be on TV. And so I sent out more than 200 VHS tapes. And my mom remembers I would make copies and FedEx them and cross my fingers and hope someone would call. And it took a while, probably about a year or so. In the meantime, I was a writer for a station in San Diego, and I talked to the news director there and showed him my tape and said, hey, why am I not getting this job yet? And he said, listen to your voice. I would never hire you. So, and the reason why is now, thanks to him, he got me to go to a doctor. He said, check your voice. What's wrong with you? And it turns out I had swollen nodules on my voice box, and I had no idea. So right now I have a raspy voice, but fresh out of college, my voice was a lot harsher. It sounded like I was always sick because I literally had damaged my voice box in school. So the doctors in the crowd know what that means. So swollen nodules, I got those fixed. I went to speech therapists and voice coaches, and they helped me heal my voice by speaking out of my diaphragm. So it's a whole part of news I didn't know I needed to learn. And so finally, I got my first on-air job. So that was in Yuma, Arizona. Has anyone been to Yuma or heard of Yuma? Yes, okay. It's on the border, California, Arizona, Mexico, right there, little dot. And I don't know if you can tell, but on the side there, can anyone recognize what those are? Big old 3/4 inch tapes. So this is what we started with. So these big fat, you would use VHS cameras, convert them to these 3/4 tapes, and then play that, and that's how we did the news. And this was in 2004. So 10, 11, or 9 years ago. And we would run teleprompter by taping the pieces of paper together, and that would run through prompter. And that was my first on-air job. And what we did in Yuma was pretty much everything. So these girls that you see, we all did everything. That was the newsroom. So I was hired first as a photographer editor. That was the first initial title. And then right after that, producer, writer, reporter. I did weather. I anchored, and then I also covered sports. So you can imagine that half-hour show was just my head talking, and that was it. And it was a lot of work, but it was fun. We were in the middle of the desert, and to do all those jobs, at the very beginning, I made minimum wage, $5.25 an hour. Yeah. But, you know, you make it work. I had a very nice mom who I would call for help every now and then, which a lot of parents understand what that's like. So that's how it started. That was my first on-air job. You think it's glamorous, but this was the desert of Yuma, and we covered a lot of border stories, very important stories about, you know, illegal immigration. And I still remember this. It was just a funny story. It had to do with that terrain, but I was covering an illegal immigration issue. Someone had crossed the border and Border Patrol was looking for them. So I'm driving in our news cars with a VHS camera by myself looking for where this story was. And all of a sudden, all these Border Patrol agents surround me and they come and try to figure out what this person's doing. They thought I was the illegal that they were searching for because that's just the terrain we were in. But no, of course, I was there to cover what they were trying to find. So that was it was 110 degrees in Yuma. It was a tough place, but 2 years later, I was able to learn a lot, and we covered a lot of important stories. And then next career move, I moved to Reno. So I worked at the CBS affiliate in Reno. We had a great time. These are our photographers, editors. That's a big satellite truck. So while I was in Reno, there was fires, there was snowstorms. There was a lot of that. It was very cold. We covered a lot of the big snowstorms that happened up at Lake Tahoe. And it was fun. I mean, I was there for 4 years. We did a lot of live shots for CBS Network, morning show. So that was a great experience. CNN, I did a lot of live shots for them during any kind of big stories that would happen because we were at a CBS affiliate. So you can do live shots basically if they need someone in that area. So that was a neat experience for me to get to be, you know, on big network news, and I was very excited. And this was still kind of early on. I was probably a reporter for 5, 6 years at this stage of my career, and then made it to a bus. So that was always one of the dreams I had, to be on a bus. Buses and billboards, they're fun. So, hey, we gotta, you know, look forward to something. And then we did a lot of neat interviews. So this is President Barack Obama. He, a fan favorite, I see. So he came to Reno, and I was able to meet him and speak with him one-on-one. So that was a good experience. This one you may not like as much, but Paris Hilton, not everyone's favorite, but of course her line, "That's hot." Do you remember that? Yeah, so that's Paris. We did live shots like this, silly ones. This is a big snake at the zoo. I don't know. They've decided to put it on the reporter and have fun with that. And there was also a serious side, of course. I went to Kenya with a group, a nonprofit called Think Kindness, and we donated shoes to a lot of the kids who are runners. So they were marathon runners. We would run with them in the mornings, and they didn't have shoes. A lot of them wore different size shoes or, wedges and things that you would never imagine running in. Most of them were barefoot. But we ran with them, we gave them shoes, and that was part of a documentary we covered with a group that was based out of Reno. So I got to travel with them and help cover the conditions there. And these kids were amazing. I still hold their messages to heart. And then from there, what was that? What year was it? It was in 2005? 6? Yeah. It was, I'm like trying to remember my list. I don't know. I've traveled a lot. So then after Kenya, I went to Sacramento. So this was a CBS affiliate in Sacramento where I was weekend weather reporter. I filled in anchored. And a lot of what happens when you move up to bigger markets, you have more viewers, which means you also have more critics. And especially when you're at the weather wall, everybody judges and everybody has, opinions. So I would get emails like this. Dear Neda, you're fat. Or, hey, you're one hamburger away. You should slow down. Like, people would say a lot of things that, you would take as hurtful, but you brush it off. It's fine. And so I learned to get a thicker skin. And obviously, you want to always do your best, and that's what matters. So you just don't care. Like, it really becomes one of those things where, well, you took the time to look up my name and my email and send me something that's not very nice and not very helpful, and that's fine. But that's part of the job. That's part of what we do. And then you also get this. This is the Emmy Award that I won, and that was a lot, it was a happier moment. So this is Emmy, and we named her Emmy. But I got this covering a story about snowboarders up at Lake Tahoe, and they were doing all kinds of tricks and crazy things, and it was on a day off. Me and a photographer went up and covered the story because we thought it would be fun, and then it turned into this, Emmy Award-winning story, and that was a, moment of pride. My mom and brother came, and they were there at the award ceremony. And now I'm in San Diego, and not on a bus yet, but on postcards. So we get to sign these and hand these out to people. And so I'm the evening anchor there. That's my co-anchor, Jim. Sabrina's our meteorologist. And it's a fun group. And the coolest part is I get to live right by my family. So finally, after leaving in 1998 to go to college and travel all over the place, me and my mom and my brother are close by. We finally live here in Southern California. My brother's in Irvine, mom's in San Diego, so it's neat to get to be together, and she's obviously happy. I think you can tell. So that's kind of been the journey, and the big message is obviously every step of the way, believe that you're gonna make it. There's no question throughout the past 12, 14 years that I've been wanting this, that I was going to get it. It's just a matter of how and when, but you just keep trying. You just have to keep pushing for it. So I want to go back to the 4 agreements. So the message that I kind of take along with me everywhere. Again, be impeccable with your word, and I want to break it down each one just to explain kind of why they're so important. So to be impeccable with your word, here in the Zoroastrian community, all of you know, like, good thoughts, good words, good deeds, and obviously speak with integrity is a huge part of that. Say only what you mean. So of course in my career, that's so important. You can't make stuff up. You can't not speak the facts. So you have to look them up and say them before you, or think before you speak. It's very important. So say only what you mean, and avoid using the word to speak against yourself or gossip about others. So how many times when someone says, oh, I suck, or oh, I'm such a loser, like, nobody wants to be around that person. So to use the word to speak against yourself is only hurting yourself. You're not gonna do any good that way. And to kind of advance in your career, you can't go to a boss and say negative things about yourself and expect to get far. They're not gonna necessarily trust you. And then of course, gossiping is not a good idea, no matter what. We don't wanna talk bad about others. And a good lesson that I've just learned is just assume that everything you say will be broadcast everywhere. So whether it's in writing or speaking or what it might be, even text or email, it could get out there. This day and age with social media, it gets everywhere. So just to be careful about that, no gossiping. And then use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. So that, of course, is such an important message. Thank you. Yes? Mm-hmm. No, it takes time, and that's why these are just good agreements to keep in mind. So they're always something I would take a picture of this, and I have this in my phone, and just will remind myself, just to have something you can look at, and even when you are thinking like what's right, what's wrong, and every step of your, work and family, friend life, you can always check yourself. So we all need to, like, obviously I'm not perfect by any means, and it's just good reminders. Okay. Who wants to take a picture? And of course, this is by the book written by Don Miguel Ruiz, so he gets all credit for this. Just good messages. Sure, of course. I can email it too. Yeah, I can email it out. No problem. And the next agreement, don't take anything personally. So this one is a big one. This one will help. I think it has helped me. It has helped a lot of people. Obviously, if I took things personally, those emails I would get, I wouldn't be able to do this job because, you constantly get critiqued, and I can't take them personally. Nothing others do is because of you. So as much as you might think you're the center of everybody's world, we're not. People don't care about you that much. They care about themselves. Like, you're mostly in your own world, in your own mind. Your past, your experiences determine why you make the choices that you make. So obviously, what they're doing is because of them, because of their life that's led them to these choices, and they're treating you a certain way because of what they've gone through with their life. So what others say and do is a projection of their own reality and their own dream. We've all been raised different. Even me and my brother were raised a little different. Like, we're all different, so the reasons why we will do certain things, we have no idea why other people do what they do. We weren't there when they were 5 years old or 8 years old or anything to know why they are the way they are. So it's their own reality. So it's not on you. And when you're immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. We don't want to be victims to other people's opinions. You don't even know if they remember that opinion that they shared with you. It may have just been something they said because they were not impeccable with their word. So, and that's okay. You just brush it off. No big deal. So that's an important one. Don't take anything personally. And then the next agreement, don't make assumptions. So that's a big one. A lot of people, it's easy to do. We assume things are happening, and they may not be. There's a whole whirlwind going on in our minds about what might be happening, and none of that's real. So find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. So that's really important. Even, obviously, with my career, if I don't ask questions, I won't know the information. So, and then I can't share the facts with you. So then I can't be impeccable with my word if I don't ask the right questions and have the courage to ask. So there's a lot of questions in our job people don't want us to ask. They tell us you're not allowed to ask that, but you still have to, because I want to share the facts with you, and if I don't know the facts, how else am I going to get them? So never make assumptions. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. You might sometimes say something, you had no idea how hurtful it was to somebody else. Someone, could be taking it completely wrong. And that's obviously, if you communicate as clearly as you can, we're not always going to be perfect, but try to communicate as clearly as we can. Maybe that'll prevent some of the sadness or the drama or the whirlwind that's created in someone else's mind because they have made assumptions. And with just this agreement, you can transform your life. I really believe that, because this is a big one. I mean, we all create a lot in our minds on our own, and a lot of it is just in our minds. So the asking questions part, obviously, it's a big part of my life, so I fully back that. And then always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment, of course. So, of course, when we're healthy, when we're sick, we may not be at our best when we're not feeling very well. So you rest, you get healthier, and then hopefully you'll do your best. So just knowing that you're trying, that's an important one. So under any circumstance, simply do your best, and that'll help you to avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. Because how many times, oh, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. Well, just do your best, and you won't have to say, I wish, I wish. You're just doing your best, and you just let that be so you can really feel like you're on the right path. Because we're not always going to get that first TV job, the first VHS tape we send out, but you always do your best, and you always try, and you don't give up. So those are the 4 agreements, and I can always email that out if you guys want to get a copy. And then again, when you guys come to San Diego, tune in every night at 10. We're adding a new newscast at 4 p.m., so that's kind of the next advancement of my career, and who knows where it'll go from there, but that's my story in a nutshell. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. All right, and now I'm very, very proud to announce we have Kuma here. Can't wait to hear her story.
All right, thank you. I think you have me, you have me loaded. We have men over here too, which is nice. Oh, good. Good crowd. Well, while he brings up my PowerPoint, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm kind of loud. First of all, good morning to all of you and Happy New Year. It's really wonderful. And how nice the room is filled in, ladies. So we want first, though, to thank our family and our extended family because you filled it in first for us. And now thank you for everybody else who's here. It's really nice you're here. Okay, you've got me up. Oh, I forgot the clicker. How could I forget my clicker? And it just goes this way, right? Okay. I won't use it yet. I guess I was supposed to do my little panel. I kind of thought that my stuff might be a little not that interesting. It was so amazing to see your career and how hard you've worked. Just both of you in the media. I know there's a lot of work. It's very, very difficult. So I'm very honored to be here with young women that have worked so hard to get where they are. My career is a little different, a little boring, maybe. When I graduated from high school when I was 16, and then I decided, like everybody, because I grew up with my family, I was going to be doctor, lawyer, engineer. I ruled out, well, one of those three. I thought those were the only things available, really. And I ruled out engineer very quickly because I cannot do math. I mean, my poor father would sit there, and you know how, any of you count on your fingers? Yeah, my dad. And he just looked at me like, well, you don't know? I tried chemistry. I tried a slide ruler. The only thing it's good for is drawing straight lines. I just wanted to cry, and I did cry. And I remember telling him, I'm never going to use this. I'm never going to use this. And he knows I have never once used my chemistry, my trigonometry, my calculus. I can balance my checkbook. That's it. We're done. So we had to rule out engineer very quickly. I have a cousin Jimmy. He's an engineer. He's made everybody proud. My cousin Nina has a degree in chemistry. She's done that. So I went to school, and I thought I would go into journalism, and I really enjoyed it. And so my first year of college, I was able to go through college on a journalism scholarship. And then I had a job back in Washington, D.C. as a Senate intern, and I told them all very proudly, I'm going to go to law school, because that was the last one left. Engineer was out of the question. Medical school was absolutely, my hat's off to any of you who have gone through medical school and how in the world you go through what happens afterwards. I mean, all the internships and the things that you have to do, and then you have to go into your specialty. Oh my, you're going to be 50 by the time you get all done. So I really respect you. And again, the point of our group was not to say doctor, lawyer, engineer isn't good. I'm just telling you I failed at all 3 attempts to do that, okay? So that's how I ended up, kind of by happenstance in my career. And I was in Washington, D.C., and I very proudly told them I was going to go to law school. Any of you who have lived in Washington, D.C. will now know exactly what they said to me, which is, they are a dime a dozen. Are you kidding me? We have attorneys that are working down in the Senate cafeteria. We have attorneys over here. We have attorneys, because there were attorneys everywhere. So I kind of fell out of that, and I thought, okay, so then I just came back and drifted for a while. And I worked for Social Security. And so I'd started with Social Security in 1975 as a GS-1 clerical. If you know anything about the federal government, we go all the way from teen, and then there's a few of us that make it into the senior executive service rank. So I started as a 1, and I had been every single step, and because I had to climb my way up through Social Security. So I decided in my late 20s I might as well go back to graduate school and do something, and I love public service. I think it has a lot to do with our culture. I prefer to be in service. I prefer to be behind the camera, behind the action. I don't want, because I just don't want to take the credit, but I want to make things happen and make them happen right. So I found out that there's such a degree called public administration. It's amazing. I was able to get into graduate school. I have no idea how. I guess they needed an Indian. I don't know. I met a quota, right? because I'm not all that bright. And I ended up at the University of Southern California down here in LA, and then went from there to Sacramento, out to Washington, D.C., because we did an intergovernmental management study. So you had to live in all three places. And while I was in graduate school, I went to school with a bunch of men, and they were working for the Bureau of Prisons, and they were going to school for free. And if any of you know anything about tuition at USC, to know that someone's going for free, you're really good to go. And I was studying and going like, how am I going to pay my student loans when I get out? And these guys are going for free. But they said, you should come and work for us. Come work in the prison system. And I'm like, oh, I'd never work in a prison. Where's my perception of prison? From the media, right? And I mean Hollywood media. I don't mean my dear distinguished folks who work in the media. I mean what you have and the impression that you have. You have horrible, scary, and for my older generation, it was things like Brubaker, Escape from Alcatraz. I mean, just some real scary, negative things. And so I told them, oh no, never I'll work. I'm going to stay at Social Security. I'm a social worker by heart. This is what I'm going to do. So I finished school, and then all of a sudden, I'm in D.C., and I want to come back to Southern California, because who wouldn't want to live here, right? So I'm like, I got to get to Southern California, and Social Security said no. I was already working in congressional affairs. They wouldn't transfer me. And I remembered this man I'd gone to graduate school with. So I called him 2 years later, and I said, hey, were you serious about working in prison? I didn't even know what a prison, don't know anything. He took my phone call because he only knew one Kuma Deboo, right? Yeah, like, yeah, that weirdo name. All right, what does she want? And so he said, I'll take you. And he put me in San Diego. So Neda and I, we've crossed paths. We just didn't know it. We've crossed paths throughout our career, it turns out. So I ended up in San Diego. And I just want to tell you that my first, whoops, I know it's getting a little tired. This thing's like, all right, finish. I didn't do very many slides for you. But the first day I showed up, I walked in downtown San Diego. I'm 32 years old. I've left Social Security, a career of 15 years, left everything to go work in a prison only because I wanted to live in San Diego. So you could just, you know, so don't look at me as a role model. You know, what is this? So I'm in there, and we start in class, and we're all sitting there. There's 6 of us. We're all brand new. You have to go through 2 weeks of familiarization. And 4 hours into my career, the lieutenant comes in, and he's showing us how to put handcuffs on. And for those in law, we're like, what? They look so easy in the movie, you know, the way they whoosh, hit them on there, and they tie the person up, and they take them away. Try doing it when you've never touched handcuffs. And then he said to us, well, all of you go upstairs and grab an inmate and strip search them. Oh, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even, I couldn't even figure out, are you kidding me? So there were 2 of us who were females, and we went up to the female floor. I mean, we never crossed gender strip search. It's very important. I need to put that out, especially if it's recorded. We never crossed gender strip search. But you do have to go up, and because it is a necessary part, and I think it's important for those of us in law enforcement, we've got to know what you've got hidden on you, whether or not you have drugs, whether or not you have a weapon. So it's just part of what happens. And anytime you have contact with the public after a visit, they are indeed strip searched to be sure that individuals have not passed them contraband. But it was the most horrific thing I have ever done, is to have somebody take their clothes off. And I'm not even looking, so it was the worst. I mean, she could have brought in an Uzi, and I would not have known that she had an Uzi, because I wasn't going to look at her. And it turns out this individual was the former mayor of one of the towns in Southern California. So later on, when I go home and I'm telling my roommates, oh, guess what I did? And they went, oh my gosh, are you kidding? Her? And I'm like, oh, yeah, her. And I was sure I was going to quit. I was just like, I am going to quit. So we also have issues where we're afraid of what we do, but you know what? You get over it, and you move on. And what's wonderful about the Bureau of Prisons is that they send you to training. So I have to throw this in because you told me I had to. This is my father in the front seat, and this is like I got to be good to my dad, right? So they do send us to training. Believe it or not, we all go. Every single one of us, down from secretaries, caseworkers, it doesn't matter. You all must come out a federal law enforcement agent, and you must qualify in firearms. So we went down to Glencoe, Georgia. I was gone for 3 weeks. These are just pictures from our training. You must qualify in all 3 weapons and self-defense. Way back in the olden days when I went, we even had to qualify in Aikido, which is the funniest thing in the world. To teach somebody Aikido in 3 weeks, are you kidding me? I mean, look at Steven Sagami, he's been doing it for years. So, you know, you have to practice for years. You can't learn Kodagashi and all these sort of things in just 3 weeks. But we went down, we did it. I passed. I was very proud. I shot honors in firearms. And the only reason I shot honors is I'd never handled a weapon before. And those are the favorite. So for women here, if you've never handled a weapon, guaranteed you're going to do well because you don't have any prejudice. If you've prior military or you've been hunting or your parents taught you how to handle a weapon, you have all these built-in prejudices. But if you go and somebody just says, this is what you do, you shoot perfect. What I will tell you, though, is that they told us if you fail anything, they send you back. And then I will have lost my job and everything. So the first time we shot, which was the handgun, the 9mm, you're allowed 30, you got to get 20 on the target. I had 2 on the target. Yeah, you think it's funny? It wasn't funny. I'm 32 years old. I've quit Social Security. I'm not a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and I only hit 2. So what happened? And I'm sitting there, and I've got tears welling up in my eyes, and even one of the guys next to me, the man next to me said, honey, one of those is mine. I felt so bad for you. I shot your target. So really, I did 1, okay? Well, what happened, so the instructor came up to me, my eyes are full of tears, and I'm like, this is it, I'm going home. This is the first time I've failed, seriously. And he looked at me and he said, wink at me, sweetheart. And I'm like, what? And he goes, wink at me. So I winked at him, and he goes, give me your gun. And he put it in my left hand, and he said, you're a lefty, because I am ambidextrous, and I didn't know that, and I shoot left. I do literally everything left-handed except right. And then I shot honors. So he saved me, but I didn't know that the way your eye looks is how you shoot, or the way you wink determines that. So don't even give up. Sometimes somebody will come and help you and do something stupid. When they tell you to wink at you, they're not flirting with you. They were actually trying to help you. So I passed. I just want you to know, and in case you can't find me with my 80s, leftover 80s hair, there I am right there. So, all right. I got to get some water. Anyway, so I made it, and I love San Diego, but then they had a job in LA, and they said, you should put in for the job in LA, and it was a promotion. My attitude was, I don't want to live in LA. It's busy, it's dirty, it's a hard place to live. I don't want to live in LA, especially if you see where our prison is located in Los Angeles. Turns out I was the only person that put in for the job. So that's how I got my first promotion, too. So I went to Los Angeles, but I fell in love with what I do. I have to explain to you that, you know, you look at a criminal, and I have so many people who say to me, but haven't, you know, they're murderers, rapists, they're this, they're that. And my attitude is, and it has a lot to do with the 4 agreements, which I believe in very much, and I've actually taught inmate classes in the 4 agreements, because you just always do your best, and you don't make assumptions that you know really that person's history. If my job is to work in a prison, then my job is to provide that service. And if I'm going to take a check from the Department of Justice, I'm going to do exactly what they asked me to do, and that's it. I'm not there with a hidden agenda. I don't have an agenda. I'm not a former victim that needs to take retribution on somebody. So I learned a lot about that and worked my way up and became a case management coordinator, which is somebody that takes care of all the casework that goes on in a prison. Worked a lot with witness security folks, people that go into the program where we have to hide them because of the cooperation they've given the Department of Justice. And then I left there, and because I've moved 8 times for the Bureau of Prisons. You have to move in order to get promoted. You're not allowed to just make your career in one location. So I went out to Florence, Colorado, where I was an executive assistant, and there I handled all the media. And that's when I learned my first thing about how to work with the media. And I went to media training. We were taught by a number of reporters and how to deal with the media, how to present your mission, how to do what you need to do. And so I left there and became an associate warden up in Dublin, California, which is a female institution. And so I worked with women. I found working with women to be the most difficult and most challenging thing I've ever done, because We're different. I mean, the three of us getting ready for today, I think we were a lot different than the panel that got ready yesterday on my father's panel. I think we communicate different, we do things differently. And so a lot of things about women is that you come to prison because of the man in your life. It's either, and it's true, it's either your husband, your boyfriend, your brother, your father. In some way, the individual got caught up in the criminal activity of the man in their life. I'm not saying that women are perfect, and they don't, because some of the most cruel individuals I've met can be women, but a lot of ours throughout our life happen because of the men in our lives. So I learned a lot about it. I left there after being an associate warden for 22 years, and then I ended up back in Washington, D.C. as a deputy assistant director for the agency, and worked in their, it's called IPA, Information Policy and Public Affairs. And while I was there, one of the biggest projects that I worked on, if you remember, back in 1995, Timothy McVeigh, our first and largest domestic act of terrorism prior to 9/11, is probably the easiest way to say it. And if you remember, this angry young man killed all of these individuals right on the day before Hitler's birthday in retribution to what had happened in Waco, Texas. So this happened when I was in Los Angeles, but now as I'm deputy, it's come time for his execution. And if you remember anything about that, that happened in 2001. They set a date for his execution, then they had to cancel it because there was discovery of more evidence. And then finally, the execution was carried out in June. By that time, the Bush administration was in office, and Attorney General Ashcroft decided that he wanted all the surviving victims to be able to witness the execution. This is the first time that's ever happened. Usually, it happens in the execution chamber. The media is present. The individual who will be executed, his family, or whoever he selects, and then there is a small select group of victims. And then that's usually how it goes. What they decided then they would do is in Oklahoma City, they would open it up to all 300 plus individuals who survived, or they were the relatives of those who were killed in the bombing. So what happened was my team had only planned to go to Terre Haute, Indiana, and then it turned out we had to all go. And so we ended up going out to Oklahoma City also. So I just was going to show you a little bit our media coverage. We were the people that Neda would come up and interview and want to talk to and demand to know what was going on. And this was the first execution the United States government had done since the early 60s. So it was packed. We had over 400 media from all over the world on this cornfield in Oklahoma City because we just had to set it up. That's why these pictures are kind of boring. They're mine. That was back in the days before digital. So I did learn a lot about media. And when I finished, and you learn a lot about humility, and you learn about the tragedy that affects victims. So I've never lost sight of the victims and what goes on. We spend a lot of time worrying about the criminal, but really the victims carry it for the rest of their life. So I learned a lot. I had a team down there. I had the best team. It's the first time I was allowed to pick my team. Usually the agency doesn't let you pick your team. After I left there, I told my boss from DC, I need to get back to California. I didn't want to go to California. It's been my whole life. I keep trying to get back to California. And they came up to me and said, well, no, we want you to go to Connecticut. So starts with a C. All right, we'll go to Connecticut first. I ended up the warden at FCI Danbury. FCI means Federal Correctional Institution. I didn't want to be there. This place was built as a public works project during the Great Depression. Okay, for those of you for the engineers in this room, you know exactly what that means because it was built for 500 men during the Great Depression. When I got there in 2001, it was housing 1,100 women. Oh, so you can only, the place was falling apart. So as a warden, you learn a lot about infrastructure, plumbing, sewer treatment. I mean, really boring stuff. That's why I told you this would be kind of boring. But I won't bore you with what I had to do there. I stayed there for 4 years, and when I left there, I went on to Hurlong, California, which is up in Northern California, and I activated the prison. It's an all-male prison. medium security inmates brought it online for the first time. So, and what's really nice, I lived in Reno, so I am sure that I saw Neda on TV. And I love Reno, just like you do, and that's also where I met my husband. So I have very good memories of Reno. So Reno's an excellent place to be. Then, towards the end of my career, they asked me if I would go to Glenville, West Virginia, into the county of Gilmer. And that's where I was able to be appointed to the senior executive service, because that's kind of the final level you can go to. You have to be appointed by your agency, and then you're sworn in by a federal judge, et cetera. It was a challenge. It was more than I really needed to do. Being in West Virginia is quite different. Certainly no one has ever heard of Zoroastrianism. They assumed because of my name, they told me that Kuma Deboo is a Muslim name, so that I was Muslim, and they did not want to work for a Muslim. So I encountered a lot of things, and they made assumptions. They broke every one of the 4 agreements. I will tell you that the second of the 4 agreements, and you have no, it's so near and dear to me. The second of the 4 agreements is never take anything personally, right? I failed at that every day. And I remember I have the cards too from Don Miguel, and I would take one of the cards and keep it in my pocket throughout the day. Don't take this personal, don't take this personal. I'm a woman and I'm a Muslim, so you're not going to answer, you're not going to work for me. And the issue, too, is that it's wrong in a federal situation or in any situation to discuss religion. So I didn't deny it because it's not appropriate to ask me, period. And at one point, somebody said to me, well, don't worry about it, Warden. I told them you're Hindu, because Kuma is a Hindu name, right? So it's just kind of interesting about how it works and how we end up perceiving people. They make assumptions. And for me, every day, just doing my best was a miracle. That if you could get through the day and you have just done your best, then you can really have accomplished something. So I'm going to kind of just, I finally retired. I think this is where we kind of end. Yeah, well, this is, I just threw this picture in. It's gratuitous, correctional looking kind of pictures. But almost every place I went, everything I did, I was one of the only few women that were in the crowd. Now, I will tell you, though, the Bureau of Prisons has about 125, 126 wardens. 24 to 25 of them, I don't know the count today, are females. And we had a female director for over 10 years. So in my agency, I never felt that there was a glass ceiling. If I look at my agency and I see the pictures, I see a female as the head. And we had a female attorney general in Janet Reno. And if you know right now, Mr. Holder is getting ready to leave, and a female is coming in behind him. So I feel very blessed. I have no chip on my shoulder about, well, I couldn't get anywhere because of that. I was just very lucky. And I also think being Asian had a little bit to do with it. In the federal government, they celebrate everything. You have to celebrate Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, and they also have Asian Pacific Islander Month.
In 1966, Andy Dufresne escaped from Shawshank Prison.
All right, well, let me tell you something real quick before I wrap it up. When people found out I was a warden, what they end up saying to me almost all the time, remember we talked about prisons and your perceptions of movies that you might have seen. Okay, so hopefully the volume.
In 1966, Andy Dufresne escaped from Shawshank Prison.
Okay, so I get this a lot too. I saw Shawshank. I love that. And I've been at dinner parties and stuff, and I'll just stand there and go, okay, I don't know what this has to do with me. So, right? So we throw that perception out. We don't like that one. So then the next time they tell me, and then they say, oh yeah, but I really like the Green Mile. And then they want to talk to me about the Green Mile. And so this is, again, our perception a lot of times from Hollywood is the Shawshank Redemption, if you really know the story, I mean, the warden is so corrupt, the last thing I want to hear is that you really... I mean, he's a corrupt man. I'm glad he shot himself at the end. In the Green Mile, at least, the warden is a pretty decent guy, right? If you remember anything about... Has anyone here seen Monsters Ball? No, see? Yes? Oh, God bless you. Well, why doesn't anybody say something like that to me? Because the warden in that movie is pretty decent, and Halle Berry is just beautiful. So, I mean, I don't know. Not that I don't look anything like Halle Berry. I don't mean that. I just mean, talk to me about a movie that might make me feel a little bit better. But what I'm telling you now is that I'm hearing all the time from folks is, well, what do you think about Orange is the New Black? And well, first of all, you know, just so you remember, Stephen King, he just wrote The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption. It's all fiction. It's just great screenplay, all right? So it's not based in reality. They're just nuts. So we will talk to you now about Orange is the New Black, only because when the book first came out 10 years ago, my thought was, oh, well, who cares? It's a very poor, ooh, is this being recorded? It's an interesting book, but not exactly very accurate, right? And not right. And so this is Piper Kerman, and when she put her book out, she sold the rights to her story. And so once Hollywood got their hands on it, instead of looking for facts and not making assumptions and, you know, always doing things correctly, they decided that they would make it more interesting, because true life is so boring. It is so boring. So when she wrote her book, she says, and you can't see it and you don't need to see it, but she says, I am changing all the names in this book, because I'm going to protect the rights of the privacy of people who work there and people that I was with, except for 2 people who gave her permission to use their names. But when you get to about page 24, she talks about me, because I was her first warden, which really just really got me. And what she says about me, and I just want to share this with you, she says that when she was worried before I came in the room, because she wanted to know if I looked like Wendy O. Williams or Nurse Ratched. Do you know who Wendy O. Williams is? I didn't know who Wendy O. Williams was. It was like, well, bring up the Shawshank Redemption, please, because at least I have a point of reference with you. Okay, so let me show you this is what Wendy O. Williams looks like. Yeah, she committed, I don't know what that has to do with prison. And then she said, Nurse Ratched, do you know One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? She was the nurse. What? Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with it. So she's not really that happy with me. She said that she didn't like me. She liked the presentation. She thought I had a frumpy pantsuit, hideous costume jewelry, but she did say I was fit and that I looked like I was from Mideastern descent. So I guess we can live with that. The point that I'm unhappy about, though, with all the glamour of going around now with Orange is the New Black, is that they've kind of turned it into I guess there's just a lot of sex. Is that the best way to put it? Yeah, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of odd stuff, and the staff in there behave atrociously. Fortunately, she did not use they have not used my name in the show, because if they did, I think I'd be out of my mind, because I am the only Kuma Deboo around. So I would not be happy with that. But this just kind of gives you an idea of what media can do to you. So now nobody mentions Shawshank, nobody mentions Green Mile, and I'd be happy to go back to those 2 as opposed to having to explain this. So just a little bit of an aside. And then I was going to tell you, I was for a while the only Asian person in the Bureau of Prisons that had achieved any sort of rank in our agency. And now if you look at him, there's the gentleman who was from Hawaii. He had retired. Dr. Mortsugo had retired. Kush Youssef had retired. And finally, I have. So right now in my agency, there are no Asians or Mideastern individuals that have achieved the rank of SES or that are wardens now. So they need a little more diversity. I think that that's important. But I also think we should get a job because we're qualified and not because we're going to fill a quota. I never want to be someplace because I'm filling a quota. So I'm going to kind of wrap up my little thing. I've told you a little bit about me. I just want to show you a couple of slides before I end. I looked up a lot of non-traditional Zoroastrians. You can Google anything, right? Young folks know this. You just Google anything. So I wrote Zoroastrians, non-traditional, Zoroastrians careers, and I just saw a couple of other individuals. Of course, we absolutely all are very familiar with the first one. I don't have to tell you. I mean, there's probably his relatives are here attending to this week. And so a great person in our community, certainly not a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, but a wonderful musician with an amazing career. I learned a lot about him. I didn't know as much about him until I started. And he even has a star on Hollywood. So that's pretty cool. I think it is. So I'm very proud. And that's a very interesting non-traditional career. This young man, I If you know Farouk Balsara, there may be some of you who know his real name, right? But a wonderful, wonderful career. And at the time, by the time that he died in the 90s, unfortunately dying from AIDS, his estate now is valued at over $150 million. So I think it's very important to also see that there are some very non-traditional careers in our community, and he's just somebody that people really know as Freddie Mercury. And then I just did a kind of a montage of other folks, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't know their careers, but as you look at all of these individuals, they're also Zoroastrians who have very interesting careers, but who are not in the traditional field. Even Persis Kambata, you probably remember, she was in that first Star Trek movie. We have been well represented as Miss Indias. So I just think it's nice to know that we have a lot of non-traditional Zoroastrians throughout our lives. And I just added more, and I just added some just for the fun of it. So if you see somebody you know, please don't be offended they're not here, because there are so many. There are hundreds of us in our community that have very non-traditional careers. Yeah, even cricket. You know, that was neat. That lady was, I guess, one of the best cricketers. Is that the right way you call it, cricketers? So, and this, you're familiar with Eric, and he's in a lot of stuff. And I also have to tell you, just because this is my presentation, I can also throw my brother in there. And so my brother is an actor here in Los Angeles and does a lot of the Prego commercials. So this is, you've seen him. His commercial runs on like Madam Secretary, mostly the CBS network right now. So this is my handsome brother. We're very partial to our brothers, aren't we? So, yeah. So there are so many people here that I can't, I don't have time to list everybody for you. But right now I'm sure that you can probably think of several more that should be here on the list. I also threw this slide in just for fun. Now look at these names, and if you know anything about these individuals, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg. I found one Indian gentleman in this list. All right.
About some college being successful.
She's right. Every one of these individuals is a gazillionaire, and every one of them dropped out from undergraduate school. Okay, so just as an aside, please tell the parents here, I'm not encouraging your children to drop out from undergraduate. Okay, I don't want to walk out of here and go, yeah, then pick on my parents. Your daughter is encouraged. No, it's just that I don't think any of you would be ashamed to have one of these children of what they had accomplished also, too. So they had a great idea, and they pursued their idea. So that was kind of it. Well, we're now towards the end. I've used my time, and I don't want to run over. But what I wanted to do is to thank all of you for coming and listening to our group. We have a little question and answer. We're not done yet. And right now, what I'm doing now is working as a criminal justice consultant, and in particular, I'm working with what's called PREA, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. It's a legislation that was passed in 2003. In particular, to work and to take care of individuals who are part of the LGBTI community, which is also lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. Because a lot of times that one subsection is not treated well, particularly throughout the criminal justice system. And so now I'm working at being an auditor where I go into correctional facilities and ensure that these individuals are safe in their environment and are treated safely, not better or preferentially, but safely, so that they can, be safe when they're incarcerated. So anyway, I'm glad to be here with all of you, and I will now go back to my group.
Thanks, ladies. So now we'd like to open it up to the audience. Do you have questions for any of us? You can ask us anything about our careers, our education, what movie stars we've met. Feel free. The lady in red in the back, and there's a microphone that he's going to bring to you so that everyone can hear you.
Thank you. My name is Jasmine Kotwal, and I work at Princeton University in human resources, and you talked about perception, and what we are trying to inculcate into our employee fold is unconscious bias. And I really firmly believe that we all have that within us, but to acknowledge it and then work on it will make us better people. So I encourage everyone to kind of think about that when you look at someone, like you mentioned, you know, oh, she's Muslim. It's just something to think about. Keep in the back of your mind, and I think it's enlightening when you start thinking along that vein.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Never make assumptions. You're
Yeah,
right.
and I'm
Yeah.
sure I've encountered assumptions about myself. You know, people look at me the way I look, what my name is. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
So, so we've all encountered assumptions, and I'm sure everyone in this room, you know, based on the way you look, especially after 9/11. I know I ran in a college election right after 9/11, and someone looked at my name and thought that I was Muslim, and they thought someone actually wrote a flyer, and it said, "Don't vote for this person. He's Osama bin Laden's son."
Oh.
So just based on my name, they assumed I was a man, and they assumed something about me. And so it was a scary time for everyone. What I'm saying is when you move through life, don't let those assumptions get to you. Just operate from a place like the Four Agreements. Just operate from your place of who you are. So I never let that get to me. So I'm sure.
Yeah, I've had that too.
Yeah.
Like just as I showed you guys in Yuma, it's a smaller community, and there's a lot of snowbirds, we call them. So there's an older generation of people that come from Minnesota, cold places, that want to stay in Yuma during the winter time to get away from the snow. And so it's just a different generation, and they grew up differently. And as soon as I went around to interview a few people, one of the guys, he was a senior citizen living in it was like a mobile home community, because that's how they traveled and lived. But he looked at my name and he said, "What's your name?" "Neda Iranpour." And he did not like that. And I said, "Yeah, my family's from Iran." And he just turned around and walked away and left and didn't even ask a single thing and didn't care to ask or find out. But, you know, we faced that, and you know, it's his loss. Like, he can't, he won't learn about our culture and our people and anything. So there's a lot, obviously, that we can offer and share. So obviously we don't do the discrimination, but people do.
I think in the back.
I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Connecticut, and I was just wondering, what do you define as a quote-unquote traditional Zoroastrian career path? Because I stereotypically think that that means something that's math or science.
Well, I mean, it's whatever you've kind of been raised, I guess, whatever you've grown up with. There was one of the messages I learned, it was a documentary I had watched. Basically, a lot of what our parents want us to do, their goal and their intention with our lives is to make sure we're safe. So I think that's why a lot of these traditional paths, we call them traditional, but they're safe. I mean, obviously everyone would hope their children go through university, and they want to provide that for us, and that's an important part of growth and learning. And so our parents find that to be a safe route where you'll be in a secure, safe position in life. So that ends up a lot of times maybe being math, science, engineering. There's jobs out there when you graduate. You know, that feels better for parents to know that that's what your children will be doing, and you don't always have to follow everything your parents tell you to do. Sorry, Mom. She didn't tell me not to follow what I wanted, but of course it's not about always being safe. It's more about, are you being true to yourself and following your passion? Yeah. And that's not always traditional.
I agree. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
It's very. Hi. It's very encouraging to see all you ladies be so positive and have a very nice positive outlook on life and careers. I just wonder, was there ever anything in your career history that discouraged you? And if it was, how did you overcome it?
Well, I can speak for myself. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with the entertainment industry here in Los Angeles, but it's difficult to break into because everyone from all over the world comes to LA to work here. And I struggled finding a paying job out of college. Thanks to my parents who supported me for that time, but I worked for free for the first couple of years. I worked 12 to 16-hour days and made zero money. So I actually spent money on gas and lunch. So I was paying people basically to let me learn from them. And during that time, I struggled because I was like, I went to school, I got a degree. You know, you grow up hearing all these things about how when you graduate, everyone tells you, you get a job. You know, they tell you in school, it's so easy, you graduate, you get a job. But no one tells you about that in-between phase when you might not get a job and people might not return your calls. So for me, the one thing that kept me going, I'm a very positive person in general, but I'm a planner. So I had a backup plan. My backup plan was to be a substitute teacher. So I took the test and I got my certification and I worked 1 week in an elementary school office and turns out I don't like little children. So my backup plan of being a substitute teacher failed and I realized in that I really had to keep going. And so I continued to work for free and then someone said, oh hey, we like your job working for free. Why don't you come work for me for $100 a day and we'll pay you to come work 16 hours, which if you break down the hourly rate for $100 a day, you're really not making much more than minimum wage. And so I always recommend, even if your main goal is something crazy and out there, try and have a backup plan. So knowing that you have that safety net and backup plan might actually motivate you to do your job more because you know that there's a floor for you to fall back on. But yeah, there were lots of discouraging moments. And I've had over 30 jobs in my life, and so there were some crazy jobs. That's all I gotta say. I have stories.
Whatever you gotta do.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Some of the things that I have never known today I do.
Oh. Uh-oh.
From Dad.
You made it so simple, but you had difficult times when gangs fight and everything, and you had to deal with. And you didn't mention about those things, which is very important.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. I appreciate, that's my father. I didn't plant the question. Part of running a medium security male institution is that you do have a lot of issues just like you have in the community where you do have a lot of gang activity. And Dad's right. During my last institution, I had a whole unit that I had to lock down for a full year just because of the issues that we had to do to deal with. There are different groups, Sureños, Norteños. It's a whole nother visit with all of you. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges, but it's fun and it's problem solving, and I love to solve problems, and I like to make sure people are safe. And I've never felt afraid once. I have a lot of females saying, "Oh, aren't you scared?" I was more afraid, particularly in San Diego and LA, walking from the parking lot to getting to the institution because the street is dangerous. When you're in a correctional environment, you have people coming. If you can hold them off for a few minutes, you'll have somebody there in very short order. And because I do practice, I really live by the 4 agreements. It sounds really crazy. It's just so much, and I worked with my inmates on it. I said, if you can just take these 4 things in your life and go out in the community. But because I really practiced and preached it, I was never afraid to walk anywhere, and I always walked alone in the institution. And I knew that if something happened, even before staff had a chance to get there, other inmates would step in too, because I treated people fair, firm, and consistent. And if you do that, then you're never belittling or humiliating someone. You never want to take someone's pride from them. I don't understand why we have to belittle individuals. So.
And then I would be outside your door. Hey, can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, she would be out there and want to know.
Talk to us. Yeah.
Before I ask you my question, I'm a woman and my daughter is a woman, and I wish she was here today. This was a beautiful session, and it's wonderful to have your talk. And my question is regarding those 4 agreements. One of them is don't take things personally. And what I have experienced at an organization level is very often if you disagree on a topic, what will happen is a lot of people will take it personally, and then the next day they stop talking to you, or their friends all stop talking to you. So how can we educate the individuals in our organization to get to a point where they can detach that person from the topic that's being discussed or voted on? That, look, that's a topic, let's have a discussion, and then everyone votes, but you're still friends, even though you disagree. So do you have any suggestions about that?
Of course, when it comes to working in group settings, we can only do what we can control, which is ourselves. So the best thing you can do is set the best example that you can and be as clear as you can be with your explanation as to why. So that's a big part of don't making assumptions or don't take things personal. You want to be as clear as possible so there are no misunderstandings, and then ask questions. Like if you feel like someone's obviously upset, ask straight up, hey, what's wrong? Talk to me. Let's talk. It's a huge part of the problems, I think, is there's never clear communication. And it's okay to be obviously honest and blunt and ask what you want to ask. If it's in your mind, just say it out loud. No one will know it's in there. So I think in those kind of settings, that's setting that example. So we can only be as good as we can. And we can't tell other people how to act necessarily. We can't control that if they're hurt. But we can help them through it.
And also, one of the big things she touched upon, if you think someone's upset at you, human nature is just to avoid it. I'm just gonna pretend that you're not sulking in the corner and that we're friends and there's nothing wrong. And I used to manage a staff of 10, and I realized that's the worst thing you can do. Because people are feeling invalidated. 90% of the time, people will feel better if you just validate that they have an opinion. And even though you disagree with their opinion, as long as they know that you understand that they have this opinion and they have a right to that opinion, that goes a long way. Just validating that someone else can have a differing opinion or a negative opinion of you, and that's perfectly okay. And for anyone who manages or from an organizational standpoint, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with mindfulness practice, but I actually took a 12-week class on it last year, and it teaches a lot of the 4 agreements, and it really helps you develop skills in how not to take things personally and all of the skills that are necessary. So if people are looking for an actual physical thing that they can work on, that's a tool that someone pointed me in the right direction, and I've passed it on to people.
Before I ask a question, I came in this country way back in 1955 December, and my first stop was Texas. And at that time,
not in the 50s, so.
It was so horrible that when I go to bathroom, it says black. So the black people will tell me, hey, Whitey, what the hell you are doing here? Go to the white place. So when I go to the white place, hey, Blackie, they call me Blackie, oh no, Brownie, but what the hell you are doing here? Go there, you know. So even in Colorado, we were refused to serve the coffee and everything. But I must say that American people have changed a lot in generations, because our young people saw that what the older generations was doing was not right. But now my question to you, that since you are a reporter, you know, somebody has said that you cannot make people believe what they don't want to believe. And now you are going to report something, or you are interviewing something, and what the guy says, and what you want to say, and what you want them to believe, and what he wants the people to believe. How do you go about it? How do you represent your news in such a perspective way that even though you are giving a clear picture, but they are not getting it?
Great question, because that's something we face every day. And I think when it comes to covering stories properly with the news that's happening, you have to take a step back. The first thing we always do, just for background on how we gather these stories, we meet as a newsroom, talk about it, what needs to be covered, what's being talked about, what are big issues going on. Then we'll know what's standing out and what people are curious about or what they're talking about. And then I go and talk to people, and first you ask all the questions you want to ask. Every question you can think of to help kind of figure out really what the information is. Read through a lot of people's agendas, because you can see people's agendas pretty clear after we've done, I mean, I don't know how many interviews a day, you just get a feel for that. So you can see their agendas, what parts of it they're trying to push, and that always to me is a red flag. Because then you really want to get the other side. You want to get more than one side, obviously, for every story. and then you keep asking and asking and asking. And then through all of that, there's hours and hours of work for a minute 30. And that was like 4 minutes that you guys saw. So that's, months of work. So it's a lot of, you hope all reporters do this. You can't always trust that all reporters will do that. But you want to be as thorough as you can and research as much as you can. Look stuff up. It's all there. Google away. And then you ask all the questions you can, and then pick the parts that are as truthful. And you also have to share their side, because obviously it's their story to tell, but you include more people to balance it.
Has anyone tell you you're a liar or something?
I mean, people they'll tell me I'm a liar. They'll tell me the person I'm interviewing is a liar. They're mad at the story for whatever reason. It bothers them, obviously. But all I can do is always defend the reason why I got that, and where I got that information. So as much as we don't want to get sued, we have to be careful. And so we will make sure we can attribute every bit of information that we put out there.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Do you have a confrontation with your editor who finally puts the word out there? I mean, everything gets cut, right?
Well, in the end, I get to cut it, so it's a...
But do you have any say in that?
Yeah,
You
like
do?
that's a
Okay.
huge part of, it's kind of the way the news works most places.
Right.
We have producers and writers and the anchors, and we're the person whose face is on that story, so we don't want to do anything wrong. So I'm kind of the last filter with information, like to fact check and make sure, where'd you get this from? Because there's some writers that are hired fresh out of college that don't know how to find information. And so I will have to ask and make sure and look it up myself and do all of that to make sure it's not me embarrassing myself by reading that story that kid wrote that no one knows that kid wrote because it's still my face on there. So you really have to be careful with that.
Right. So if you don't mind me asking you this question, are you affiliated with CBS or Fox or NBC or which station?
I've worked at CBS affiliates before. Right now we're a CNN CW.
Oh,
So
okay.
our station now is CW, which they only have 5 news stations in the country. Most of the time CW is like kind of the different Vampire Diaries, I don't know, different shows that they air.
Right.
But they have 5 cities that they've chosen to put news on.
Okay.
So our affiliation
Because generally the
is
reason
CNN.
why, if it's Fox or CNBC, they either go one way or the other.
And just so you know, that's
Yes.
network. That's totally different.
Oh, so you're not with any
Nope.
network as such?
We have affiliation. So CBS, when I worked for CBS, for example, it's in New York, CBS Evening News, CBS Morning Show. That's the network station. They have affiliates in every big city around the country, and we pick and choose what we cover in our city.
So their politics
So,
would kind of filter
nope.
into your station
No,
too?
no, they don't. They don't at all. We don't know them. Like, people will call us and get mad at Dan Rather or whoever it was where I used to work. And he's not down the hall. They think he's down the hall. We're going to go tell him what they say. But we have nothing to do with them. So we actually just get video from CBS affiliates. So all the CBS affiliates in the country, you can use their video. And all the reporters that have gathered information, we can use that stuff. So it's all compiled into our CBS database. But the way we cover it is up to us.
Okay. Because the reason why I'm asking is because my daughter is a producer at Democracy Now! The publicly funded media. They're the largest publicly funded media in the U.S. But they don't have any parent company overlooking
Right.
what they produce. So she's got a lot of leeway in actually putting the real news, what she calls, out there.
Yeah.
So that's the reason.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I mean, most
you guys
newsrooms...
have terrific careers, both of you.
Thanks.
And you make a great actress. A very good actress.
Thank you.
I mean it. Thank you, all of you.
We only have a couple more minutes, so I see if there's a gentleman. We'll take these last 2 gentlemen.
You.
My name is Farhad Kontraka. I'm in medical physics. Okay, can you hear me all? I have a question to Ms. Deboo about health coverage. Have you heard about Medicare Part G?
Part G? No.
When you do not have insurance, you buy a gun, shoot one politician, you are in prison. You have free
Baba boom!
meals.
Fell right for
You
it.
get free meals, health coverage, eye coverage, club, everything, sauna, gym. So that's called Part G.
Oh. Well, I've never seen a sauna or Yeah. We have one more.
Yeah, so, you talked about being worried about your name, ethnicity, gender, and being discriminated against, or feeling that it happened. Have you ever thought going into a situation that before you go in that because of my name, gender, ethnicity, something bad will happen when I go in, and hundreds of times it didn't happen, and sort of you were scared going in because of who you were, and what you feared didn't happen?
Not for me. I would have to. I mean, I went my entire career and never once had an issue until my last duty station. And so it was new for me, and I was glad I learned it, because I'd made a lot of assumptions about other people who had said, oh, it's because I'm this race or this gender. And I always thought, oh, that's an excuse. Why are you? But then I did realize, I learned that it was something that can happen to people. So it was good for me. I think in the end, I probably learned lessons I needed to learn. And humility and listening and not being afraid to ask questions. Because then I would ask them, well, where did you get that impression? Why do you feel that way? And then you could start a dialogue. So it was good for me. Yeah.
I don't think I experienced that.
One thing I did, I actually, because of my name, Samanaz Kapadia, people, especially in entertainment, it's all perception-based. It's very superficial industry. My first boss at Sony told me to put Sammy in my name, S-A-M-I, to soften my image and to let people know I was a woman. So that was something I did, and I did that for the first 5 years of my career, just to soften the image that people would have of my name and to realize that I was a non-threatening woman. So that was the way I compensated for any perceptions about my name and my background. We have a couple more minutes, so.
Next to the brother.
Hi, you all have touched on this to some extent, but one of my favorite things about our religion is the equal footing for women.
Mm-hmm.
And Kuma, you mentioned you never experienced any glass ceiling. Samanaz, I imagine you certainly did.
Yeah.
Although that's an assumption. So I do want you all to just reflect on glass ceiling and overcoming that to the extent you might have.
I work at Fox Sports. There's a significant amount of women at Fox Sports, more than I expected in programming, but definitely in the overall entertainment industry, there's a glass ceiling in terms of a lot of decisions are made by men. And if you guys look at the movies that are out today, anytime a female-led movie makes money, everyone is shocked that women like to go to the movies and spend money. So there's definitely a perception. More things have to do with looks in Hollywood than everything. So when I started, I was surrounded by a lot of blonde, skinny women who were 5'10", and all looked the same. So there's definitely a perception that looks matter. You're a woman. Because of the way I look, I've definitely had people just look at me and assume that I'm dumb. I've had my own employees assume that I was stupid because I'm perky and I'm a sorority girl, and she can't know anything because she's always happy. And so when people find out I have a master's degree, they're reassuming things about me. So in my industry, more things are based on perception and gender for sure. Just people assume that you have nothing to bring to the table. But sports is opening up. Women make up 48% of the NFL audience, and NFL is the biggest business we have in sports today. So as more people realize that women like sports, they enjoy them, we like being in television. Almost all, if you guys ever watch a game, all the sideline reporters at NFL games are all women. Yeah. And so that's a really good opportunity for us.
But isn't that a problem? Sideline reporters strike me as...
A lot of people think they're fluff, but what you don't realize is all of our teams, of course, you're going to have Troy Aikman and Joe Buck calling the games. And there's still that perception that because women haven't played football, we don't know anything about the game. For anyone college football fans here? Going to the Rose Bowl, go Oregon. But when Condoleezza Rice was named to the 13-member panel to pick the playoff system, a lot of people, she's a woman, she doesn't know anything about football, she can't possibly decide who the best teams are. Well, if you look at her background, she's the daughter of a football coach. She grew up around football teams. But people don't realize, they just look, because you've never played the sport. So the female sideline reporters, they go out, they may have never played football, but they grew up around football.
She didn't play any of the Texas teams.
Well, Texas football has had a lot of their own problems this year, so let's just not go with Texas football. But yeah, so they spend all week there. So even though people see the blonde hair and they think they're pretty, they do put in the work. You just don't see the work. You just see Troy Aikman and Joe Biden. We have to wrap it up because I'm being signaled by several people. But
We're done.
I'll be here all day.
We'll be here.
If you guys have questions, feel free to come up to us individually. For those of you at the gala night, I will be there.
Very quick.